opening bits. We could do a whole episode of opening bits.
Next
3 weeks worth.
The next time we need a Thursday episode and we're desperate, we should just do all opening bits.
We can do 2 weeks from now, the day before our anniversary.
Yeah.
It'll be the 30th of October.
All right. It's Thursday, October 16th, 2025. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we're talking about not the new Running Man movie, not the old Running Man movie, but the book by Richard Bachman by Stephen King that started it all in 1982. It's the GeekNights Book Club. Yeah, we didn't do shows in a while because, we live in a hell world, and it is not lost on me that as I am existentially worried about the descent of the United States into fascism, that I ended up spending a week in Germany and then a week in Japan while having these thoughts. And both of those countries in the year 2025 are not perfect, but they are a hell of a lot better organized and more functional.
For the time being, Japan's election didn't go well.
Of course, every country.
And you look at Germany's, parliament.
Germany and France are barely holding the line against the far right. Every country is going fascist. It's 1936 all over again, basically. But I have not been to Japan, let alone Tokyo, in a long time. And the last time I was out there was in Emily. I did a vacation. But the thing that's funny is what changed between then and now is that since our trip to Japan together, way back, I've flown around the world like literally around the entire globe in one trip like 5 times. And I've been overseas like 30 or 40 or actually more like 70 or 80 times. Like I've traveled a lot. And going back to Japan, a country that I actually know a lot about, compared to other countries, like when I was first going to Turkey, it's so easy, even if you don't speak the language. The little sympathy I have ever had for tourists who get confused when they visit another city is gone, because it is impossible to fuck up to get the trains in Japan, even if you don't speak Japanese. They bend over backward. Like in the main train station, there are so many signs in English that are like, hey, the train you need is here, with an arrow and a picture, and it points at a line on the ground that has written in English like train to airport. And if you follow the line, it takes you to the right place to stand, where there's a picture of the train you need to get on, and there's another picture of the train you shouldn't get on, and it's crossed off, and it says, no, this is not the train you should take. It will not take you to the airport. All of this is in English. And my entire week in Tokyo, it struck me how almost every white person I saw was loud, in the way, and doing something wrong at every point. Like, an example of this, I was staying in Chiyoda City, so near the Imperial Gardens. Like, that's where our office is. I was staying in this, like, residency. And outside, the Imperial Gardens are there. And that's now a very popular running spot. So when I go over there on Sunday to run like 10 miles just to wake myself up, I see that there's tons and tons and tons of Japanese running clubs, and they're all running in groups around this route. It's like a very popular route. All of them are running in one direction, counterclockwise.
Some white people were running the other direction.
The only people I saw moving in the opposite direction, running or walking, were a small number of extreme...
People who did not appear to be Japanese.
I'm going to go back. It was white people and a very small number of very, very old Japanese people who had a look on their face that I can only describe as, I'm old and I don't give a fuck. Get out of my way. But the other thing that was fun about this trip is my company's, like, the per diem for food when you travel is usually between $100 and $120 US. So like $120 for food a day. And you don't get to use it or lose it.
$3 $40 meals. That's
But
that could work. Even in New York City, you'd have money left over.
yeah, no, it's fantastic. So it basically means
You could eat like a less than $10, get a breakfast sandwich, right? or even an overpriced $13 breakfast sandwich.
And you get like a $20 lunch. Like that's a pretty good lunch.
You're already way ahead because you saved half the money from breakfast, right? So then from lunch you can go all, and then you could add dessert. You can add poison beverages.
Yep. But they have not updated the per diem. The per diem's still in US dollars. But I was in Japan, where the exchange rate is
dollars.
So all I'm going to say is I don't do this normally. I eat pretty cheap when I travel because I'm not like that ostentatious. But I went all out in Tokyo. Like the first night, I went to like I asked all the people I knew there, like, what's the fanciest omakase near here that isn't one I need a reservation for like weeks in advance? Because I'm not going to be able to do that. And also while I'm there, no omakase place will take reservations except over the phone. And if you do not speak Japanese, that is not going to happen. So
there are some things you're going to, still need to speak Japanese, right?
So I went
I guess, the other thing is you're only in Tokyo, right? It's like, from what I've, heard, it's like, if you're in major cities, the need to speak, even in New York City, that's true. If you come to New York City and you don't speak English, you'll be fine. If you go to the suburbs, you go to White Plains, and you don't speak English, you might be in trouble. Right? It's like, same thing in Japan. You go to Tokyo or Osaka, you'll probably get to manage without speaking Japanese. But if you want to go to the woods, there's no English.
Turkey was like that. You get out of the downtown in Istanbul or out of the tourist district, and nobody speaks English anymore.
Yep.
But I went to the omakase that is like on the roof of this building that like all the rich people who work in capital markets like go to as a fancy place to have a nice dinner. And I had like one of the better omakase I have ever had. And I still wasn't able to use up the entire per diem, including having had some significant amounts of poison during that dinner.
I think the poison is also cheaper in Japan than here.
Everything's cheaper. With the exchange rate.
But I'm saying not just the exchange rate, like the actual price of the poison.
Which, not just the poison, food as well. And this is something I've said on Geek Nights before because it's something I've experienced in Japan, in Australia, and even in Germany to an extent. The middle of the road, like relatively cheap food is crazy good. And the cheap food is shitty, but it's cheap. And the expensive food is amazing, but expensive. In America, especially in New York, the amazing food is like better than anything you're going to get in almost any place on earth. But it is also as expensive as one would expect. And the cheap food is perfectly serviceable, and it's actually cheap. But middle of the road food in almost all of America sucks ass. It's way expensive compared to how bad it is. But in Japan, like an 1,100 yen ramen, which people said, oh, that's overpriced. That's like $6. Is better than anything you're going to get at like Takumen in New York City. Like, good God, is that ramen good and cheap?
All right, well, we have 10 bajillion opening bits, and if we use them all, we won't do any book club.
Yep, so I think we're going to get right into the book club, unless you have some opening bit you want to talk about.
I got like 50 billion opening bits. Where do I even begin? We should save.
Maybe we save them all. We were talking about for the Geek Nights anniversary, we'll just do an episode that's just all opening bits, and we never get to the main bit.
I don't know.
Old Geek Nights was like that. We had a bunch of episodes where we did the news so long, we ran out of time and just didn't do what the main bit was at all.
Anyway.
Things of the day. I'm only using a channel I've used before again because one, it's a different person hosting the video. It's not the Legal Eagle it's someone else on his team. But two, this is actually a pretty important video because Geek Nights, we are fans of a lot of things. We're fans of anti-fascism. We're fans of jury nullification. But if you're not aware, jury nullification does not just apply to trials with the jury that you're thinking about, 12 angry people. You can also nullify on a grand jury, which is even more powerful.
And the trial doesn't even happen because
and
you don't got to worry about the trial if it doesn't happen.
This video is pretty long because it gets into a lot of details, but it's really worth watching if you live in America right now because as you know, the regime is fashing, and people are getting arrested for dubious purposes and on bullshit charges, and all sorts of nonsense is happening. However, there's a saying that a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich, meaning grand juries in America historically, like the prosecutor has to fuck up real bad for a grand jury to say no.
In one sense, yes, but in the truth is that prosecutors don't take things to a grand jury unless they already are like sure that this person is.
Which means the prosecutor fucked up. Grand juries only return no bills when either the prosecutor brought something they should not have brought, or what they brought was just like patently bullshit, to where you grab a bunch of people, put them in a room, and you make them listen to a guy, and then the judge just asks them, is that guy onto something, or is he full of shit?
There's no defense, right? It's like if I did a federal crime or was accused of a federal crime, it's like some prosecutor collects evidence and then just has to convince random citizens that it's worth taking me to court. And I can't really say anything. It's just all they had to do is just convince a room of random people. And it's like, if they think they can do it, they try. If they don't think they can do it, they don't try. And so that's why they almost always succeed, because they go, shit, I don't get enough evidence. I don't think this will convince a room of randos. I won't bother.
Yep. So there's two things going on right now. Because the government is increasingly indicting people over bullshit, and people in cities, which is where most of this is happening, tend to be, on average, I'm just going to say smarter, more progressive, and more reasonable than people who are not in cities, broadly. Very broadly. Grand juries are returning no bills on a lot of these cases. Because imagine we're in New York and you get on a grand jury and they're like, yeah, this guy on a bicycle assaulted this SWAT team officer. I feel like people like you and me are going to be like, yeah, I doubt that happens.
Well, even if they did, they'd be like,
even if they did, my response might be good.
Well, the problem is, you might be good, yes. But the other thing is that it's like, okay, what are the charges, right? It's like, well, the charge is, my misdemeanor assault. It'd be like, okay, yeah, you punched a guy in the face, sure.
Yeah, but no, they just threw a Subway sandwich at him?
They're coming in there and they'd be like, terrorism charges. And it's like, that don't seem like terrorism to me.
Yep.
No, right? that ain't terrorism.
So I'd suggest, as my thing of the day, watch this video, because it'll arm you with some useful information, since it's the way things are going to go. You may end up on a grand jury or in front of a grand jury. The odds of that happening are way higher right now than they have been in your entire life up to this point.
The point is, if you're going to dodge jury duty, don't dodge grand jury duty. Grand jury duty, you don't just sit there and usually decide one thing, right? It's like they bring together a grand jury and they bring a bunch of stuff before them, so you can put in a lot of no's depending on the situation.
So you got a thing of the day?
Yeah, so people probably know about this already who aren't me, but I was made aware recently. There's a thing called the most important device in the universe. Basically, there's this prop, this TV movie prop that someone made. Somebody named, what was the guy's name?
John Zabrucki.
Zabrucki. So John Zabrucki is just the guy who designed props for, movies, science fiction stuff, right? And you've seen his props in things Ghostbusters, Star Trek, RoboCop, all kinds of stuff, right?
But you've definitely seen this particular prop.
But it's sort of like how the Wilhelm scream appears in so many things, right? It's like this prop, it's like this guy made the prop and various video productions would rent it out from his very, popular prop company. And so it appears in hundreds of their productions, this one thing. Sometimes it's a major part of the plot. Sometimes it's just a background object. And this guy on YouTube put together a video compilation of all the instances he could find of this thing appearing in shows, whatever. And it's a 3 or 4 parter. I'm only linking to part 1. You can find the other parts on the same channel. It's pretty funny.
Yep. I mean, it was even in Lower Decks relatively recently.
Yeah, that was one of the cliffs.
Yeah. What's funny is that
cartoon Star Trek people, the animators, know about this, and so they drew it into their.
I feel like in the early days, it was in no way intentional. It's just imagine you walk into the lot, you're like, all right, I need some random science-y fiction prop.
Well, I mean, if you are designing a set and you see this thing, you're like, oh, it's actually like a well-designed prop, because like it can catch the eye, but it can also be in the background and not a distraction. And it's sort of like a table, but it has a little height. So there's a lot of shots you'll see in various productions. People put it in the foreground and the characters stand behind it, right? And it makes a good camera shot because it's like, it looks like they're standing in a lab, right? But you can cuts off the characters below the waist. It's a good framing to use this thing, which is part of good prop design. Is he designed this object so that it would fit well, in TV productions.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people said, "Oh, give me that one. I need that. Yeah. Bring it over to the set."
All right, so let's just dive right in. I was always, as a kid, a fan of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I think I've seen every Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Most of them.
I think I've seen literally every one. I could double check the list. But when I was a young kid, The Running Man was one that loomed large in my life. Like, I think I saw The Running Man before I saw Terminator 2. It was just a movie.
I think I saw The Running Man not that many times, but there were frequent times where I would see a piece of it because on TV or something.
Yep, it was on TV a lot.
Right. So, like, I think I only saw the whole thing like once until I watched it again just recently. But which is probably the first time this millennium I'd watched it. Yep. But last millennium, I saw it at least once, and then I would see pieces on TV frequently, but I wouldn't like stay there and keep watching the whole thing.
So because there is a new Running Man movie that is coming out that from what I knew before, and now we know for sure because a trailer just dropped recently, that is supposed to be a faithful, or at least much more faithful adaptation.
I saw the trailer when I went to see Tron, which was not the greatest. That was unexpected. But, and based on the trailer and just having read the book recently, that movie is going to follow the book closely, quite closely, except, of course, there will be increased Hollywood action, and there will also be updated modern sensibility.
Well, we'll get to those modern sensibilities when we talk about the book, because that's a thing I forgot about with Stephen King, especially his earlier works, until I hit a certain character and I was like, oh, right, fuck, Stephen King, god damn it. But so we decided to do this as the book club book, but partly, as we said when we announced it, because the book is set in the year 2025. And
it was written in 1982.
Yeah, so it was written when we were born. It is set today, and many of the things that are addressed in this book are very close to being the reality that we live in now. Like, what is the description?
They were close to being the reality when the book was written, too.
In 2025, the world's economy is in shambles, and America has become a totalitarian dystopia. Ben Richards, an impoverished 28-year-old resident of Co-op City, is unable to find work, having been blacklisted from his trade. Blah, blah, blah. He basically goes on an early version of The Hunger Games, the TV show, to die for money.
Yep.
And a lot of this book is not so much like his story is very there, but a lot of it is around seeing the environment he lives in through the lens of him navigating it as the Running Man. There's a lot of like background storytelling about the setting. And also, having read it again now, before we dive in, I've read a lot of Stephen King before. This is one of the few old Stephen King books.
I don't think I ever read a Stephen King before.
Yeah, I can't believe never even read The Shinnin'?
No, I only seen it.
Yeah. This book is very, very Stephen King coded in terms of the writing. And I learned that people figured out Richard Bachman was Stephen King really fucking quick. And that's why he gave up on that.
They're not even hiding it now. The trailer is like Stephen King.
The only reason, the last thing I learned why he used Richard Bachman. And it wasn't for the normal reasons.
Because of all the racism?
His other books have the exact same racism.
Okay.
In the late 70s through the late 80s, the American publishing industry broadly had this rule. No author who's worth a shit can ever publish more than one book a year. Like that would be crazy. Who has time to read 2 books? Like there was like a thing. And Stephen King was personally mad about that because he can write. He actually was writing books very fast, and he
writes a fuck ton of books. He's like the Tezuka of book writing.
So he got a publisher to let him publish more books in a year by writing the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th books under pseudonyms. That's where Richard Bachman came from, just so the publisher would let him publish 2 books in a year.
Interesting. So he wasn't trying to hide.
Nope, he wasn't trying to hide. He just wanted to get more books out. Dude is prolific. So
Okay.
If you've never listened to a GeekNights Book Club episode before, go read The Running Man, because we're not going to explain the plot to you. We're going to talk about this book that we just read, assuming that you have also read it. So you might be a little lost if you have not read the book. And 2, obviously, spoilers, though I feel like the end of this book is pretty well foretold by the beginning of this book. The only exception to that is I did not expect a full 9/11ing to happen. It was interesting that is specifically what happened.
It was more of a fight clubbing.
A little bit of, except, anyway, I don't want to spoil a Fight Club for people.
So we're not going to talk about we can't talk about the movie we haven't seen yet because it's not out yet, and we're not going to talk about the old movie. But I do want to say that in terms of the old movie versus the book, they're so unalike, right? But the old movie keeps the themes and the message of the book like completely intact, and only the most basic part of the premise, like game show where you can die, right? It's a game show where you can die, but all the morals and the message about like television and
society, capitalism,
right? All of that is like 100% maintained in the original movie, and they just changed the plot completely, almost.
Which I think,
right?
for when the Running Man movie, the first one, was released, which was like 1987, that was probably the right call because it would get more people to pay attention to it. And I feel like people might have taken some of that away because a lot of science fiction, and even a lot of Arnold movies from that broad era, address these topics, even though they were ostensibly just action movies. And I think that was I think that was formative to a generation. I mean, I grew up watching a lot of sci-fi dystopia, and I think that prepared me for the fact that I live in a sci-fi dystopia.
Sure. But yeah. All right. So the book, right? So, I guess, do we need to summarize the plot? This guy's poor.
Yep.
His family is sick and suffering. He's got to get money. He can't get a job. So the only way he can get money that he can think of is there's a horrible, evil game show place you can go to, and they'll put you on a game show of some kind, and they'll pay you if you win.
What I love is the descriptions of the other game shows. Like the treadmill. Treadmill for Money was probably the funniest one. The one where it's like they get people who specifically have heart and lung or leg problems, and they put them on a treadmill, and they get money the longer they keep going on the treadmill.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen the same sort of thing in so many other media, right? You got your battle royales, where it's like, or
your Squid Games.
Squid Games.
But is this the first one? 1982?
Your Smash TVs. Well, there's the overlapping aspect is that they're using people's lives as entertainment for other people, right? Whereas and I guess there is also a bit of that. You're trapped in this very specific scenario with very specific rules.
Like Saw has that too. That's a common trope.
Right. It's like, oh yes, the thing on your neck will explode if you do this, and it's
But I guess what I particularly liked is, and Stephen King portrayed this really well. Most of the game shows are deadly and stupid, but they are entertainment for the hollow masses. As well as a way to get rid of undesirables. There's a whole undercurrent there. But the Running Man game show is portrayed differently. And it's portrayed as they are not looking for someone who is just going to lose. They're looking for someone who will paint a picture, because the show is more about reminding society that, one, bad people are out there and only the government can protect you from them. Two, those bad people will always get caught because we are so good at what we do. And 3,
and also those bad people are super dangerous.
Yep,
Right?
they are super dangerous, and you should hate them.
They don't pick people for Running Man who suck, right? They pick people for Running Man who are actually going to do a good job of running, just because they're so confident they're going to catch them, no matter how good they are, right? Especially since the deck is stacked against them.
Yep, and they just straight up cheat. I like the fact that they're like, you got to mail those tapes back, and oh yeah, we absolutely have a strict thing that they're not going to use that to find you because it would spoil the fun. And then he figures out right away, yeah, they're obviously using the tapes to figure out where I am.
Right. And then, of course, he figures out a perfectly good way of fooling that system by forwarding the tapes, right, to someone else who then mails them in. And it's like, oh.
And Stephen King, I've read a lot of his books, and this is something he's always done well. He will portray things like that relatively subtly without explaining it to everyone. He likes to just put details in that he expects the reader to notice, and if you don't notice them and you're confused, he kind of doesn't give a shit. And that tied into, in the beginning, when Ben Richards goes in to take the test to see what game show he's going to get on, the secretary hands the paper back, and it's there's a chip taken out of the edge, and he's like, what's that for? And she's like, don't worry about it. But she did it in reaction to him getting a little mad and showing a little bit of intense anger and expressing that he is sarcastic and dangerous. And at a lot of points during this book, other characters talk about someone showing red or expressing anger. Anytime someone lets their mask leak and shows the people around them that they actually hate the government and recognize what's going on, that is seen as a societally unacceptable thing to do. But then the Running Man game show is prioritizing anyone who expresses that, because that's what they want to show as the enemy.
Mm-hmm. And even though all these people are under the foot of the evil society, right? It gets them to participate in hunting the Running Man, right? And by offering them money as well.
Yeah.
Right? It's so it's if you're poor, right? It's it's the old thing where it's you want to get the masses to fight amongst themselves so that they don't fight against the people on top, right? And it's yes, you'll get a big reward if you can catch the Running Man. And so how's the Running Man going to get any help, even from his own people?
Yep.
Right? And then they tell the Running Man, you should, when you're on the run, you should stay amongst your own people. Don't go, right?
Yep.
You'll be more successful that way. Don't go running in the white collar area with a bunch of mansions. That probably won't be good.
Yep. But at the same time, because Ben Richards is relatively clever, staying near his own people works out really well, because it turns out there are a lot of very smart people who recognize what is going on.
He was able to find some people who helped him.
Yep. It's interesting you get that whole side plot around the fact that the pollution is a specific threat, and how nobody knows because it's covered
threat.
up. And it's interesting how the book starts to go in the direction of he's going to take the evidence from the smart kid who got all the evidence from his friends, and he's going to broadcast it, and everyone will realize what's going on and they'll overturn the government. And then 10 chapters later, he's like, oh, nobody gives a shit about the pollution. I literally not even going to bother. No one's going to listen. Telling people will not change anything.
Well, I think it's also, I guess the Ben Richards, the main character, is he is he's the good guy because he's fighting the man, right? And he just wants to help his sick kid. He's sympathetic in that regard, right? And he's just desperate. He's also a piece of shit. He's not a good person.
Yeah.
It's it's sort of he's the good guy and he's smart and more powerful and lucky, right? And so you root for him the same way you root for a superhero, but he's kind of a racist douchebag.
Yep.
Right? And it's
but a lot of that is a product of the circumstance of his birth and life, in that he is basically on the bottom end of society and was being pushed even lower because he had the audacity to in any way resist what was happening around him at one point.
I think it's, it is a thing that we see in our society, though. You think of you could go into some Trumpy ass place, I don't know, fucking Wyoming or some shit, right?
Yeah.
And there's all these rural, blatantly racist people who will just, flat out white supremacists, right? And your car breaks down, and it's they'll pull over and fix your tire, right? And like Ben Richards is like that kind of guy where like he's, you know, in somewhere in his heart is a decent human being, but not really. Right? In some sense, yes, and in some sense, not so much. You know?
But also, he's so beaten down. What I find, he's actually really funny because, especially in the beginning, whenever he's interacting with like cops or regular people, he's always kind of just sardonic, and people around him don't pick up on it and like don't get it. And a lot of times,
it's like he goes with that cop that he owes the money. And
like, when he gives the money back, that was really. Yeah. I'm glad that came. Stephen King does that a lot. Like every detail he will put in his books will either matter or come back later or be part of the theme. Like, there's no throwaway details. That's just something I would characterize in his writing.
But I think it's also it shows how he's smart, right? And also that he has a good memory. Like he remembered that, right? You know, so.
But also he's trying to be like Ben Richards is. It's interesting because he's sort of walking this line where on one hand, he wants to make the world a better place. But on the other hand, his original goal was just to get some money for his family, to save his daughter. But he keeps edging into maybe I can be a hero, but then bouncing off of that and getting thrown back into the death spiral of there's no escape and I'm fucked. And him grappling with that was very well done.
Yeah, well, I mean, because even as clever as he is, right? As he runs, right? Is this where he gets into a tight spot, right? The tightest spot is when he's in the building that he then blows up and escapes into the sewer.
Yep. No, right? But during that scene, the one thing that stood out to me was there's a bunch of other people in that YMCA, buddy.
Yep.
You just blew that whole thing up.
Yeah, that scene was definitely 100% in the trailer for the new movie because it even shows the building blowing up and it shows him falling into a sewer through a pipe. So I know they're keeping that scene. But it's like he gets into a tight spot and then as soon as he gets out, then he's got a big distance, right? He's like he pulls away.
Yep.
You know, and then he's on the run, but it's like and he's forwarding the tapes. He's sort of maintaining distance, but like they're closing in.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it turns around so quick. It goes from he's got a plan, he's going to the next place to mom called the cops, and now you're shot.
Exactly, right? It's like it keeps getting pulled, you know, it's this back and forth tension where it's like they're on his ass, breathing room, on his ass, breathing room.
Yep. Until it hits that point of no more breathing room.
Right. But it's like he can't, it's like he wants to win, but because, you know, when they're on it, they can't like escape the, you know, the societal, you know, aspect of it, right? Because they're just on top of him.
Yep.
You know, it's like if he's gonna, you know, so.
So one other thing that I thought really stood out, and I swear we got to address it because you mentioned the racism earlier. Stephen King, and he's admitted this, and his later works are way better about this. But I'm done. But his portrayal of black people in this book is typical of that era, and it is not good.
Yeah.
Even when Stephen King, like he would always express like his anti-racist beliefs, and he would always try to make what he thought were sympathetic, noble black characters. But
he wasn't consulting with anyone. He was just
like the way he writes black people is horrific in the 80s. Like, good fucking God. That is I hope none of that is in the new movie.
I don't think it will be.
I don't think it will be either.
That would be strange.
But even worse,
it wasn't in the trailer.
And you can Google this a lot. There's been a lot of essays. You've heard of the trope of the magical Negro as a negative stereotype that is intended to be a positive stereotype in media. Stephen King's works are like archetypical of that idea. He had a history of, even when he started to portray black people less the way he did, he wanted to portray them as good and sympathetic, but he ended up portraying them as mystical. And every work he has involves a black person of some kind who is somehow magical and special and the chosen one in some way. And it's just a thing that he has continued to do. And I don't know if he's done this in any of his later books, but you can read many essays on this topic by people who are smarter than me.
Well, not having read any previous Stephen King book, this was my first seeing that. And I was like, oh, I was like, this book is as old as me.
Yep. I grew up in the 80s. I remember the 80s were like...
And I also, not knowing the pen name explanation, I was like, does that have something to do with the pen name?
Yeah.
You know.
So,
you know, in the old days, pen names were often used by people writing, you know, smutty or whatever, you know, dirty, inappropriate materials, right?
So one other thing that this book does, and this is also Stephen King does this a lot, the titles of chapters and sometimes even the structure of a page is part of the storytelling. He'll have a chapter that is like one paragraph long. And then the next chapter will be a normal length chapter. But the chapters start at a number and are counting down to 0 in this book. And it is definitely a fuse because 0 is the final chapter of Ben Richard. That scene is actually my favorite scene in this book because it is specifically the executive looks up out his window and sees the 747 barreling straight at him, and he sees the disemboweled Bachman, the disemboweled Ben Richards piloting the plane and flipping him off as he crashes into the building and kills him.
Yeah, it is interesting because, you know, in the movie, there was sort of like this, you know, there was multiple characters at the TV studio in the old movie, but only really like there was the MC guy was like the guy, right? And he embodied like basically everything at the movie studio, the MC. In the book, there's separate characters. There's the MC, the executive, and there's another guy I forget.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, no, the executive was the bad guy, right? in the book.
Yep.
Not the, you know, the MC was bad. All of them were bad, but the main bad guy was that executive guy. And there's like, they set it up because early in the book, there's like a scene where he meets him, but doesn't fully understand who he is that he's meeting.
Yep.
Right. And then later on, it's sort of like a revelation, like, that guy was Chekhov's gun, actually, you know, that's the bad guy, right? Meanwhile, the whole time you were thinking, you know, in terms of bad guys, you were focused on the chasing guy.
Yeah, McCone.
McCone, right? Like the chief hunter. You were thinking that like that was the top bad guy, or that it's like, no, it was actually this guy you met for one chapter was the real... The true villain.
Now, McCone was fun because at the end, when he's bluffing about the explosive, I really like...
The bluffing about the explosive went on a little bit too long.
Well, so I think Stephen King was doing something pretty intentional there because, one, I like the detail that he writes Bill Richards explaining to the woman what to say to lend the story some credibility, like details that someone wouldn't know, because he had that knowledge just because he was old enough and had worked in industries to like know what this kind of plastic explosive looks like uncommon knowledge. And like that detail made his threat plausible in a way that it wouldn't have been plausible without that.
Yeah, no, the details of it was fine. I think it was just that sort of back and forth of like, oh, does he actually have one? I don't believe you. I believe you. I don't believe you. That went on. That just the length.
I think that was intentional because the way it played out for me was every step of that was the government trying again to say, we know you're bluffing, so just give up. And at the same time, him responding by recognizing, no, they're actually still not sure. They are definitely they've been afraid of me the whole time, and they are still afraid of me, and they are lying to me. And it gets into this idea, because right at the end when he bluffs McCone one last time, just to make him flinch, and then he's like, I made you flinch, fuck you. That is something that also gets portrayed in a more recent thing, Andor, the Star Wars show, said about the rise of fascism and the rise of the rebellion, in that it portrays this idea that no matter how powerful and together fascist regimes seem, at their hearts, they're always terrified because what they're doing is so unnatural that resistance ends up becoming natural. So they cannot but lie to try to convince him that they know he's bluffing, but at the same time, they will never believe that he is not bluffing because deep in their hearts, they are terrified of him because he has had the audacity to resist them at all. Another thing I learned about this book, after I read it and I was reading about the context, Stephen King wrote the entire book in a week.
He just said, like the kind of book
he sat down and he wrote it over the course of like 6 days, and then he just sent it straight to the editor.
Yeah. So even though, you know, the movie based on the book is like nothing like the the book, right? Except for the themes. Reading it actually felt like watching an 80, had the same mood and sort of feel and tone.
Oh, 100%. It felt like
80s action movie kind of thing.
Yeah, because it had like the way it would rotate through different kinds of scenes and the tension building and falling and a handful of climactic action scenes that happen along the way, like the shootout in the car, the blockade, the barricade in the road. That felt like this is the list of scenes you'd have in an 80s action movie.
Yeah, but like the pacing, the dialogue, the style, like is aesthetically matched.
Actually, you're right.
Movies in the 80s. Right?
Ben Richards has a lot of 80s action hero one-liners, just like Arnold does in the movie.
Right. It's so, I guess it's like if you want to have that feeling of seeing, one of those movies, you can still read this book, right? And perhaps, I don't know, other Stephen King books from the 80s might also feel that way, I imagine. Right? Or who knows, maybe other authors. I haven't read that many this kind of book from the 80s because I was a child then. I was an adult later.
See, when I was a very young child, I was reading a lot of Stephen King.
I did not. I've never read Stephen King until now.
Yeah. So I'm glad I read it. I think it was worth reading because it is.
Well, it's worth reading, especially if I'm going to see that new movie.
But also, it is from a time and place, and it was portraying a future. And much like a lot of other science fiction I've read in my life that was written, decades ago, and I revisit it in the year 2025, and I see like RoboCop was basically a documentary. It's a time capsule into the fears of our society and the fact that we are steamrolling straight toward the same things we've been steamrolling toward for the 42-ish years that I've been alive.
So I wouldn't give it like 5 stars, but like,
I do not regret my time with it.
It was fun and it was short.
Yep.
And
also it had a lot of
relevant. It's relevant because there are 2 movies.
I think if you somehow just cut out his unfortunate portrayal of black people, like that just was not in there, but you read the book otherwise, I feel like most people would assume it was written in the 90s and not realize how old it actually is.
I think it's a bit like if you want to play like Resident Evil 1, right? It's like there's some people who don't have a problem with that, but for me, it's like it's kind of janky. The controls are right, but it's like, but there's still something there that shines through. And then you play HD remake, and you're like, this is the reason we make HD remakes to improve. Right?
I mean, that's why I never played Final Fantasy Tactics, even though I know it's brilliant. And you know what? I'm playing it now because I got the remake.
Oh, you are? Okay, but like reading this book is sort of like playing a better video game that hasn't had the HD remake treatment, so it's kind of crusty from the old days, but you can still see its good aspects that shining through its crust from age. And,
so are you ready to talk about a new book, or do we do that another time?
I got some books.
Oh.
All right. So I actually read 1 1/3 of these books because one of them I finished reading and one of them I'm currently reading. And I was like, this I'll just make, there's no particular theme this time other than the book I just read and the book I'm reading now, because that's convenient and because I think it'll give Rim a difficult decision. So the first book, right, is this book called I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. Have you heard of this book?
There's been chatter about this book.
So I heard about this book. It got hype on TikTok, and I'm not on TikTok. The hype.
C'est français from Paris.
From 1995. So the book was getting hyped on TikTok, and I heard about that despite not using TikTok at all. That is how strong the hype was, that it escaped its cage and it infiltrated other places and to me. And then I went to the library and I looked on the library's website. The waiting list was super long. And I'm like, okay. And I just made a note of that and forgot about it. Not completely forgot about it, but I'm like, all right, I guess I won't go read this book right now. Go to a bookstore, right? I'm just chilling, just waiting, for someone. And in the bookstore, I see 1 copy of this book remaining. No other copies, just 1. And it's facing forward. And I'm like, well, It seems like it's trying to say something, right? I'm like, I remember that. That was the book that had a waiting list at the library. So I bought it. Even though this book came out in 1990 something.
Five.
Right? I think 95, 97?
95 and then 97 in English.
Okay. And it didn't become hot until recently, because I guess people rediscovered it. I don't know if it was discovered originally, but it feels like reading a foundational science fiction novel from like the 60s or 70s, right? Like, it just, there are those books that are just like, the science fiction books, like your iRobots and your You're Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin, like these, foundational science fiction novels, right, upon which everything else rests. And it's like you read science fiction books that come later, and you can sort of they feel different. They don't feel like they're foundational, like a Brave New World by Huxley, right, or a 1984.
Yeah,
but they don't feel like that. They feel like newer and not foundational. They feel like they're resting on top of those who came before. This feels like a foundational science fiction. You could have told me this came out in 1970 or 1960, something like that. It's the kind of book that they should make people like read in school. It's not very long at all, but it is dark, right? It is not a happy time.
Yep, I skimmed the what it is about, and yes.
I Who Have Never Known Men is a literal title. I think the original title in French was something different.
No, it is the original title in French is Moi qui n'ai pas connu les hommes, which literally translates to I Who Have Not Known Men.
Right. And it's basically about this woman who her whole life she's been in this weird prison where there's only other women prisoners and there's some dude guards, but they don't talk to them. And this is the only life she's ever known. The other people knew a life when they were thrown into prison, but she was so young then. This is the only life she knows. And then stuff happens. And it was really, this book is really something. The hype is not fake. I read the whole thing. Okay, so to make it difficult, when I was at that same bookstore, I saw another book on the shelf. And I was like, reading that dark. I didn't buy the book. This second book that I saw at the bookstore, right? I didn't buy it at the bookstore. I bought it much later, but I remembered it because I was taking pictures of books at the bookstore. And after reading the dark book, I was like, I need a book that is maybe not so serious.
A palate cleanser.
And is just, some fun times. Yeah. And I was like, well, I saw that fantasy novel at the bookstore that looked like a run-of-the-mill fantasy novel. Why don't I read that? And so I've read a third so far of this fantasy novel called The Shadow of What Was Lost, the Licanius Trilogy, Book 1. Don't ask me what Licanius is. That hasn't come up yet. By James Islington, who's some dude from Australia. It's a 3-book series, and a lot of people compare it to your Wheels of Time or whatever. And listen, this is just a fantasy novel. Chapter 1 is like kids in wizard school, right? And then shit happens and they gotta go on a quest, right? And whatnot. But what has hit me so far in this book, right, that has separated it from other similar books, which are just, fantasy run-of-the-mill biz, right, is that the difference in this book is what the thing James Islington, I guess, loves to do is you walk into a room and there's Chekhov's gun. Chekhov's gun fires like almost immediately, right? It's like here's an example. There's one chapter. A character goes to a new hidden place. In that hidden place, there's a big. They describe the place. There's a big, mysterious magical artifact kind of thing. Think like the Tusk, like a big deal kind of. It's clearly important, right? And there's a mysterious dude in like a hooded guy silently watching it. And they talk about this dude, like, who's that dude? Oh, he's the mysterious guy. Nobody talks to him. He doesn't say, he does his thing. And in any other fantasy book, that character would not come up again until like later in the book or in a future volume or in Wheel of Time, maybe not at all. In
one of the redacted books.
Exactly, right? That dude does shit that chapter. That dude does shit. And everyone is like, that dude, oh, they're freaking out. All the people who are like in this place, you know, because like, oh my God, that dude hasn't done anything. And like, right, we've never talked to that dude. That guy's just been part of the decorations here for so long, right? And that dude does something immediately. And that kind of thing, where the Chekhov's gun fires immediately, happens a lot. And this is only 3 books. And I'm 90% sure if Rim reads book 1, he'll just read all 3 books. Even though I've only read a third of the first book, I know how Rim do.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't finish the rest of the 9 Fox Gambit trilogy.
That's correct. I only read the 1.
You should. You find out what was going on. Like, you find out everything.
What was going on in the one I read. But yeah, so you can either read dark, foundational, like, you know, science fiction book that I think every human should be made to read, or perhaps a fantasy novel that is, you know, perhaps, you know, better than some others in some ways.
I think it is actually a hard call because I've been reading a lot of dark things lately. But I feel like I'm going to continue that trend. I want to go with I Who Have Never Known Men.
All right. Well, I've already read it, and it's real short, so...
I'll read it. We'll do the show pretty quick, then.
All right. I have a feeling Rim will read the fantasy book eventually.
Oh, yeah. I'm confident I will.
I don't know. Maybe if I go further, I'll be like, oh, never mind. It sucks. But so far, it's...
I mean, they never made more King Killer Chronicle books, so we didn't have to make that decision.
This is better than... I've only read a third of 1 volume. It's better than the Lies of...
Yeah, no, this has come up in a few conversations as well, this book. Both books you picked have been appearing in my social chatter in the last month
I never heard of Shadow of What Was Lost. I just saw it on the shelf at the bookstore.
Once we stop recording, I can search in the Discord to see which Discord it was mentioned in recently.